Welcome to Reels on the Rocks, the show where your host Whiskey and Sweet Tea discuss film from the unpretentious perspective. September is all about cinematic satire, and Starship Troopers is first up. Don't forget to like, subscribe, hit that notification bell, and as always, please be advised that spoilers are ahead.
Welcome back, citizens, to Reels on the Rocks. Would you like to know more?
I would like to know more. That was like the funniest thing ever. Want to know more?
Would you like to know more? Welcome back, everybody. So we are doing a pairing of cinematic satire. And we're kicking off the pairing with I'd say by now it's a revisited and more beloved film than when it came out.
Okay.
This is one of those, it bombed big time, but now, like, people, especially because they understand what it's doing, it's a good movie, or it's understood to be a good movie. And even, like, when I was, like, doing research and IMDb and all that stuff, like, I think critics at the time did like it, it's just no one went to see the movie. Yeah. But, we are doing something a little different. We don't have any little thing to talk about. We're just going to dive right into the meat.
But
so,
first,
what are you?
Yes. What are you drinking?
What I am drinking a very, very ubiquitous cocktail called Bug Juice, which there's so many different recipes for it, and I was hoping the one that I picked would be like lime green. It's not. It kind of just looks like a margarita. The one that I was going to go for was Sprite, lime ice cream, and frozen limeade with tequila or vodka. But what I couldn't find any lime ice cream at the grocery store, which I know it's not a very like popular flavor, but I was still annoyed. It's like, really? Especially I found some other sherbets.
Yeah, sherbet. That's what I'm saying. That's like when I go to like float from back in the day. I'd have Sprite and lime sherbet or orange soda and orange sherbet.
There was a mango sherbet, but that was like all I could find. And actually, I think there were a few other ones, but not lime. So what my cocktail, my Bug Juice is what I made. Frozen lime juice, Sprite, and a Cazadores Blanco tequila. So basically just like a poor man's margarita. But how about you, T?
So I also kind of went the buggy sort of route, except I went for an established classic cocktail. No, you probably heard of it, called the Grasshopper. I picked it because, well, two reasons. One, their little things in the front of them looked like, grasshopper legs. Actually, I'm thinking of a praying mantis. I just realized that. But but they're both bugs, okay? And the other thing is that, when it's completed, it looks like, it's like a neon-y sort of green, and it's kind of frothy. It tastes like mint. It's like mint chocolate chip, I guess, is the flavor that I would describe it as. But it's really good. But yeah, the frothy, like lime green color it is why I picked it, and of course the name, Bugs. Here we are at Bug World.
Well, let's get right into it. So I mentioned that this was a bomb. So Starship Troopers, it was released November 7th, 1997. Its budget was an eye-watering $105 million, which for 1997 is crazy. That's like blockbuster numbers for budget. So I'm shocked. I mean, it's Paul Verhoeven who directed this. So at the time he was still, pulling hits. He hadn't really, this and Showgirls were kind of the two movies that flopped. Yeah. That sort of made him stop making American films. But still, I was shocked that it had $105 million. It only grossed $121 million, so at least and that's worldwide. Its opening was $20 million, so not good. Okay. But it's crazy reading the credits and stuff too when I was watching it. One thing about this, I saw this as a teenager, and it's kind of one of those DVDs that were always in the DVD cabinet, and I was like interested in the cover art because it looked so cheesy. And then like when I was a teenager, I'd say like 15 or 16 is when I saw this. And at that point I was kind of getting into film. I knew who people were and stuff. And I'm reading the back and I saw it was Paul Verhoeven. And I also saw it's like rated R. And I'm just like, why is this schlocky looking like, like it looked like trash. It looked like an Asylum movie from the cover. So I was just kind of like, huh. And out of curiosity, because, like, I like pulp space stuff, I popped it in, and I actually liked this a lot when I first saw it, but one thing that really stuck with me was that it's very, very, like, B-movie special effects. Like, it looks very, like, silly. Mm-hmm. So when I saw that ILM did the CGI, I was just like, what? Like, I didn't notice that. Maybe I noticed that as a kid. I'm just... Last night after watching the film, I noticed the ILMs come up in the credits. So it's like, oh my god, it's the people who are currently doing like Marvel movies did the CGI for this. Well, and I remember it doesn't look bad. It just looks dated. Like it looks like 1997 CGI. Like for the time, it's not like god awful, but it still looks like not as good as other movies at the time. And I feel like that was a choice because this is clearly trying to kind of be like B movie with its cheesiness and stuff. But let me go through the rest of the obvious facts before we get into.
I did want to say about the special effects. I remember my mom telling me that when it did came out, though, it was like this was like top line. Everybody was like blown away by the effects. Like,
okay.
She claims, I don't know, I didn't double check this. She says it was.
She might be right.
It was like nominated for best special effects.
This came out like. If I'm getting this correct, I either would have been like in kindergarten or first grade.
Yeah.
So I have no. Maybe I'm thinking incorrectly about. To me, it feels like I could think of other mid '90s films, like maybe like Independence Day is one I can think of where I feel like the CGI was a little bit better.
We'll talk about the CGI. I think that was like we will talk about this.
So anyway, to me, like I feel it's not bad. It doesn't ruin the movie, but it feels like even at the time there were other films that looked better than this, and maybe that had something to do with it. But again, I think it was an intentional thing to make the movie look like this. But just rolling through all of the names, as I said, Paul Verhoeven directed this. It was written by Edward Neumeier, based on the book by Robert A. Heinlein, and do not worry, we will get into him later.
Yes.
The cast is Casper Van Dien as Johnny Rico, Denise Richards as Carmen Ibanez, Dina Meyer as Dizzy Flores, Jake Busey as Ace Levy, Neil Patrick Harris as Carl Jenkins, Patrick Muldoon as Xander Barkalow, Michael Ironstein as John Razak. And just a couple of like minor parts to point out before they were famous. Clancy Brown, otherwise known as Mr. Krabs, plays Sergeant Zim. We've got Dean Norris from Breaking Bad playing a commanding officer at the training facility. Yeah. And not before they were famous, but I'm pretty sure there's a Golden Girl on here, Rue McClanahan, as the biology teacher.
Yes, as Blanche.
Okay.
It was so embarrassing about that as I watched this, and I did not recognize her. And so my mom was she's going through the cast, and then when she
I can forgive you.
We went back and watched the scene. I'm like, I can hear Blanche now. I can hear her voice. I don't know how I missed this the first time, and I'm like 90% sure if she hadn't been wearing like those sunglasses or those goggles, I would have recognized her. But I was like, I don't know how I missed that voice the first time around.
Well, and I kind of missed, like, it's one of those things where just I knew that, I actually think I know from watching, like, Red Letter Media talk about this a while ago, knowing, like, they pointed out, like, oh, it was cruel seeing the biology teacher, blah, blah, blah. I knew she was, like, a big actress, but I didn't recognize her. I don't know the name because I don't watch Golden Girls as much as you, but when I was going through IMDb, I recognized her face in the picture, and I was like, wait a second. Okay, I think that's a Golden Girl. Anyway, Blanche,
the slutty one.
Blanche, the slutty one, is the slutty biology teacher. Oh, man. Anyway, so I think I kind of explained how I first saw this film. I will throw in, I enjoyed this a lot, but I didn't realize it was a satire when I first watched it, and apparently neither did most people in the 90s.
That's
I just thought it was
disturbing.
like a fun little like space movie. I didn't really like think too hard about the politics going on in the movie. I thought it was fun. I thought it was cheesy in a way that made it kind of silly, and I could tell even at the time that it was like intentionally trying to be over the top. So like that was my first impression as a teenager, and we will get into the subtext with this being satire. But this is your first time watching the film, T. What any first impressions? Anything you want to bring up?
Well, and this happened actually in the text too. I confused this movie with like Super Troopers. So I was not expecting, a biting satire. I was kind of expecting more of like a parody movie, which I guess could argue parody can be a form of satire. But very, very different movie than what I got. I will say the thing. This sounds bad. I remember more than this, but the thing that bothered me the most about this movie is Denise Richards' mouth. It's like, girl, put your teeth away. It's like she had her teeth out. She had her teeth out the entire time, to the point where at the end I was like, kill her. I think and I looked this up, and yes, I guess she got her start as a model, which makes sense. That's how, because the way she was smiling, it was just it did not feel, like a normal smile. Like it wasn't inauthentic, but I was like, there's something. Yeah, so she's smiling like the model-y way, but I was like, her teeth need to be put away. Like, stop. Something about that just bugged me. But it was
bugged you?
Oh my god, that was on accident. But
shut up, whiskey.
But no, so this was a solid cast in it. Like I said, I also recognized, I recognized specifically Dean Norris. And what was funny is I looked him up, and for some reason I couldn't find this, and I guess I just kept missing it on his IMDb page. And so then later I looked up the movie and went that way, and I was able, I'm like, that's okay, so it was him. I thought that was him. There was oh my god, this is definitely a movie where it's like I recognize so many people in this. What is his name? Neil Patrick Harris. I will say, his strength are always playing like obnoxious characters, who have, to quote them, we have an overly inflated sense of ego. That's why he was great at like Barney, and even in this character, I feel like that's when he's at his best. He was good in this. And I'm trying to think. For some reason, I thought Diz was played by Kerry Russell. It looked like her for a minute. It wasn't her. But no, this had a great cast. It had, I think, for the time, great effects. Like, to me, there's scenes that definitely look dated, but the way it looks now just feels so, like you've discussed, intentional, that it didn't bother me. And also, it's kind of like one of these things where it's such an absurdist, scenario, that even the effects dating doesn't, I think, hurt the movie now. But yeah, those are just kind of just my first thoughts on it. Enjoyed the film.
That's good to hear. So I will get into. So we're gonna start off with the most. People criticize people for whipping out the dictionary, but satire is one of those things today that is so overused as like, chill out, bro. It's just satire. Like,
I wanted to ask you that. I guess I'm not sure what satire is, because like when we were looking this up, I had issues. So go ahead, talk to us about satire.
I feel like a lot of edgy comedians and YouTubers don't know what it is either, because a lot of people just take it as an excuse to be offensive without really having a joke in mind. So the Oxford Dictionary definition of what is satire is as follows. So the use of humor, irony, ridicule, or exaggeration to expose and criticize people's stupidity or vices, particularly in the context of contemporary politics and other topical issues. So that is what the literal definition of satire is.
See, and so this was my question, and I didn't get an exact answer to this online when I was trying to find this out too for myself. Then what is the difference between satire and straw manning? Because they're both sort of, I guess, literary devices, debate devices, or whatever, to make a point. Do you have a comment on that?
Yes, I do. So one, straw man is not typically meant to be funny, and it's also it's not a good thing. It's what is called a logical fallacy. It's a bad faith way of proving your point by creating an imaginary enemy. To, you see this a lot in politics where it's like they want to take away your guns. They want to, they invent a person that doesn't exist, and this evil person has all of these plans for, that's a straw man.
Oh,
it's
like so,
I'm
like
going to make a boogie.
A popular example would be like when we had politicians saying, that there are schools are now putting litter boxes in the bathrooms.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. So in that case, like the straw man would be the like liberal teacher that thinks it's okay that kids believe that they're animals and stuff, when there is no such teacher and the litter boxes do not exist.
Got it.
So that's like the difference. Straw man is not meant to be funny, and it's also not. It's a bad faith way of arguing with someone. It's like, oh,
and also I think the big thing here is the invention of something, whereas, like you said, with satire, it's an exaggeration of what already exists.
Yes.
Okay.
So with this particular case, the thing that I think there were movie critics at the time that were claiming that this was like pro-fascism without realizing that it was making fun of the idea. So I'm sure a lot of people who've clicked on this episode, whether you've seen our past show or not, are probably already like frothing at the mouth for me to bring up the elephant in the room. So the reason this is a satire film is because this is based on a 1959 sci-fi novel by the author Robert A. Heinlein, who is a big name in science fiction. He's written other works, Stranger in a Strange Land, among some other things, and he was a very prominent voice in like being scientifically accurate in some other things. And this is one of his like seminal works. And the thing about Robert A. Heinlein, he was a military man. He's an interesting character. We'll get into some other like kind of things about him. But this work of literature is, in his mind, the way like an optimal society should run.
That is disturbing.
People have called him a fascist. He's never called himself a fascist. The thing about that is like no one ever will say like, oh, I like some people, because some people would come out and say I'm a Nazi. He doesn't see his view of like this stuff as fascism. And I guess like you can kind of see where he's coming from, because he's a military man, and like the way that he viewed this, he sees this as a story about putting the needs of the main character aside for the needs of society, putting them above his own individualism and the importance of military in society. Like that's what he is saying. But it's an interesting kind of dystopia, because for anyone who hasn't seen the film or read the book, this is a future in which veterans took over the world government, because at this point it's like Earth is like its own singular government. It's kind of interesting. All the main characters come from Buenos Aires, Argentina, which that's an interesting setting. That was a considering choice,
because I read somewhere that his name is actually supposed to be Juan, not Johnny.
Well, maybe it was in the original book too. But maybe, again, I think there's some stylistic stuff with Verhoeven that we'll get into as far as like the satire of it. But that is kind of an interesting setting, because I know I'm sure you've heard of like the conspiracy theories of like Nazi scientists going to Buenos Aires, Argentina,
fled to Argentina.
So
yeah.
he wrote it in 1959. Right? I don't know if he was aware of that when he wrote the book, but it is kind of a funny setting. And that's the thing too. Like, so this movie is actually pretty accurate to the book. It's just the book is serious and the movie is making fun of how ridiculous and over the top thinking this way is.
Please tell me the author was around to see the film and comment on it.
No. He died in 1988. So not long before, like 9 years before the movie came out. But it would have been interesting because that's the thing. The guy was kind of a hypocrite.
Oh,
Because he had he was like polyamorous. He was a nudist. Like he did a bunch of hippy dippy stuff that really wouldn't fly with like ultra right wing conservative types.
Yeah.
And I went to a couple of like people arguing in like Reddit threads and stuff about whether or not he was a fascist. And people like some of his defenders were saying like, oh, he started off being like a lib and then he turned like conservative after being in the military. Whatever.
Whether or not he is a fascist, I think is a moot point here. It's more about what the book, or this, I guess in this case, the book tells. And from my understanding of what you've said, is the book has fascist undertones, if not undertones, major tones.
Well, so I'm going to save this for after we get into the movie part, but I have a list. There's a famous list. It's been coming up a lot in the last few years for reasons we won't get into on this podcast. But I do have Umberto Eco's 14 Characteristics of Fascism, and we're going to go through later in the show and discuss whether this is a fascist society, whether the author is fascist, based on these 14 criteria. But, okay. So we have the society where you are not a citizen and you are not allowed to vote unless you have military service. And it's like this big thing where, like, as far as the government is concerned, like, it is shameful not to serve. And we have a protagonist who is wealthy. He does not need to serve. He does not need to be a citizen. His, father makes a ton of money. He lives in a mansion. And he doesn't need to be good at school. He doesn't need to do anything. He could just be a Nepo baby for the rest of his life. But all of his friends are super stoked to join up with the military.
Nepo babies in the audience.
It's like going and joining the army is like going to college in this world. Like it is seen as this awesome thing that everyone gets to do. And oh man, where are you going to get stationed? Oh, I want to be a pilot. I wonder if they're going to let me go to flight school. And it's one of those things that is one thing about this movie. So I mentioned that when I was a teenager, I didn't get the undertones. Rewatching this now, the vibe that it exudes, it's trying to be like a 1950s adventure serial.
Yeah.
Like it's trying to be like an adventure sci-fi B movie. And that's why I forgive the crappy effects. I say crappy effects. They're not that bad. But they look like a B movie. They look like, Invasion of the Mutant Mole Men or something like that, but in the 90s. And that's kind of the vibe that it's going for. And I feel like the point is to sort of emulate propaganda. Because I was really caught up in the melodrama of this when I was a teenager. The love rhombus that you've got going on with Dizzy and Johnny and Patrick, and
I hate the way they wrote Dizzy. I'm like, did we really need to have a girl in there that just couldn't keep her top on? Like, really?
That was something I was, because I remembered like that was something. So like Verhoeven, he's known for having lots of nudity in his movies. There's obviously Basic Instinct, that scene. There's Showgirls in its entirety.
And we will talk. I will bring this up because we're discussing it. Once again, we have the weird dichotomy of nudity in this movie. So we have at least I'm talking about the main characters, at least.
Well,
oh, go ahead.
Well, I knew the shower scene was coming up and stuff, and I was like thinking about it this time from that perspective, because it's been a while. This was one of those movies I liked popping in every once in a while as a teenager. But as I was trying to move on to quote-unquote serious cinema, I kind of stopped watching it. And I don't have yeah, you know what I mean? Yeah. Like, it's like, I should probably watch movies that are, like, more well-respected. Not to say that I disliked this movie or thought it was bad or anything. It was just like, I should be, like, looking at new stuff and watch, and, over time, like, I don't have the DVD anymore and stuff, and anywho, It's been a while. It's been over a decade since I've seen this movie. It might even be 2 decades. It has been a long time since I've seen this movie. So going into the shower scene, I was kind of surprised it didn't get male gazy. You didn't have like close-ups on asses and stuff. Like it was all just kind of, it was conversations between people. Hey, why'd you join up? And Johnny, why you being so tight-lipped about why you joined up? And he did it for a girl. Blah blah blah. It's all like from the top. So like you are right about it being kind of lopsided, but it's also only lopsided because breasts on women are considered nudity, but not on men. Because you don't see under the waist for anybody. And I was kind of impressed. I was like, oh wow, this isn't like, trying to get up in close and like see everybody's genitals or anything like that. It was just kind of, they're in the shower, but they're giving exposition.
I will say in the background, the characters were the characters in the background were totally nude, because we do see their lower halves. I mean, with strategically placed pipes and stuff in the background. Yes. My thing that I just thought was just so hilarious, because I'm saying it's talking about lopsided, because they did choose the top portion. Again, still the female characters did have to expose something, but what was funny is there was one shot of, and I forget what his name is, the guy with the buck teeth.
Ace.
He is talking. And there's a move, and you can see he's wearing shorts. Obviously, the main talent was, and I was just like, okay, we needed to at least have the illusion, y'all. Come on.
It was honestly probably a mistake. Like they didn't catch it.
It was a mistake. It wasn't supposed to be seen, but I was just like, it was just one of these things that just frustrated me. I was just like, okay. I mean, again, the discussion about free the nipple and everything is something to have later, but if the women are going to expose something in the scene, the male should have to expose something as well. That's all I was saying. And the fact that they were, and he really wasn't, because we could see they were wearing shorts. But go on.
I was just impressed by the restraint, because knowing, like, I remember that scene being like, ooh, cool boobies when I was a teenager, but watching it now, I'm like, oh, wow. There's not like,
watched it one-handed.
You know what I mean? Like there's no gratuitous like shots of anything.
Right.
And so that's where I will, like, you're not wrong, but at the same time I'm like, well, technically you don't see any.
But you're right, in this case
penises or anything, so like, or the JJs,
Exactly.
All,
so you're right, it is fair.
Half.
It is fair from that standpoint. And it's done, I don't know if tasteful is the word I'd use. I mean, it is, when I say tasteful, to me just sounds like a weird way to describe nudity. It
didn't feel exploitative. It felt exactly. Just an incidental setting.
It's like
thing.
Yeah, exactly. It didn't feel like, okay, we're going into this because we need to get some male butts in the scenes. That it didn't feel
exactly.
Like that. But I just wish Jezza was like that, and then just later, then maybe she takes her top off. So because of those two scenes, I'm like, she is the character, because she was obviously thirsty for Johnny the whole movie, and I'm like, of course she can't keep her top on in either scene.
So we have the characters join their, Johnny does it because Denise Richards' character joined, and he's like, oh, I gotta be with
Carmen,
my woman.
Yeah.
And his family like disowns him, which is like a whole thing. Like he has nothing to his name. And because he's kind of an idiot, he gets signed on to the shittiest potential, thing that you could join in this universe, the mobile infantry, the people who are cannon fodder, who just, they've got their machine gun and they run into battle.
Yeah.
And they're all mutilated. Like, that's a running thing. Any person who's like, oh yeah, I proudly served in the mobile infantry. The teacher's missing an arm. There's that really funny bit where the guy's like, oh, the mobile infantry's what made me the man I am today.
He's like a quadriplegic.
Both of his legs are gone. Like, So Johnny goes, and it's weirdly like a wholesome and also barbaric kind of training thing, because it's like there's a lot of camaraderie. It's not as like toxic as like what comes to mind is like the Full Metal Jacket boot camp stuff from like the Stanley Kubrick movie, like where it's just like almost abusive.
Yeah.
Like their stuff is like super intense, and like you could get like your arm horribly broken and stuff, but you always have the medic on hand, and all of the soldiers were like super nice to each other. And the other interesting thing, as I said, if you want to do anything in this society, you have to have 2 years of military service. Even just to vote, you have to be in the army. And in that shower scene, it's really interesting because they're all asking, like, why did you join up? There's one character who wants to join up because she wants to go into politics. There's one character who joined up because he wants to be a journalist. There's one character who joined up because it's easier to get a license to have babies if you served.
Oh my
so
God.
Literally anything that we take for granted in our society, it's like you have, like, the fact that they call it being a citizen or a civilian. And that's, we were talking about those funny news clips, would you like to know more? Another thing that is harped on ad nauseum excessively is like service, was it service? Oh
my God. I know what you're saying. It's service.
Yeah. I'm trying to think of the word. It's service guarantees citizenship.
That's right.
So, like, that's one of those little slogans in the movie that, like, really you got to think about, like, citizenship. You are not a citizen of the planet Earth unless you have gone through military service. And it's interesting, too, because, like, as I said, we're going to get into, like, is this actually, like, fascism? Is this a fascist society? Are we just being ultra libs? Are we just getting triggered? Is Robert A. Heinlein actually a total Sigma male and he knows what he's talking about? Because one thing that is interesting is in countries like South Korea or Singapore, like, you wouldn't really call these, like, fascist dictatorships, but in a lot of countries, military service is mandatory, like, once you graduate high school. So it's kind of, and that too, like, this isn't that crazy. All you have to do is serve for 2 years. That's not that bad.
Well, except in the oath, they say 2 years or as longer as required.
And that's like a whole thing
so
too. It's
open,
like, are you going to go
so
career?
Open-ended.
Right? I don't think that you're locked in. Like, even with this bug war going on, I do think that after you serve 2 years, I think that they let you go. Who knows? We could get, I don't know the deep lore of this, but it didn't seem that bad. Like, frankly, it seems very easy to quit. Like, that's a whole thing in the whole first hour of this movie while Johnny Rico is at boot camp. You can walk out at any time. They will not stop you. It is just seen as a very shameful thing.
It's like a dishonorable discharge, basically.
Basically. And you're not allowed back. If you walk out there, you can't, like, try again to join up.
Yeah.
So it's interesting because it's not like you're held at gunpoint, like you have to serve. It's just very, like, culturally accepted that you have to do this.
I do love Johnny. Again, Johnny was, like, so dumb. It's like we kept saying, oh no, I'm like, you're literally only going for this one chica.
Right?
And they don't even, he still wanted to go even though they weren't even going to serve together. And I'm just like, what? Wait, I did have a question though. In the book, do you know, is he put in the infantry because he is low on book smarts in the book also? Or was that a movie?
I think so. I know, I think I've shouted this out in, like, our earlier seasons of our show, but there's this great little, I think it was, they might actually be in limbo because I think they were bought by, like, one of these media companies that went under or something, like, I don't know. There was this series that I liked watching called What's the Difference? Mm-hmm. It was on, like, a cinema channel on YouTube, but then that channel was bought by someone and I think they went under, so I don't know what the deal is with it. But they did an episode on this and I watched that years ago, and they go into the minutia of, like, all the details of these things. And there are, like, little differences, but pretty much just story structure wise, it's the same. So I think it is the same deal, that he's rich and he's not very smart.
Okay.
But I could be wrong. I didn't get a chance to rewatch What's the Difference on this, just to be sure, and I certainly didn't have time to read the book. So while he's in boot camp, he gets dumped, and then he screws up so badly that someone dies, and he feels such shame that he's going to discharge himself, even though they want to keep him on. Then, the big dramatic moment happens. he's calling his parents. He's asking them like, "Oh, will you take me home?" "Of course, son. We love you. You can come back. We knew you didn't have it in you to be in the mobile infantry." And then before the call can end, there's static and silence. And then all of the soldiers are like running. "Oh my God, what's happening? War! There's been war!" And so
but they're
we find
all
out,
excited about it too.
right? So that's when the bugs happen. And so the bugs are attacking us. But one kind of detail that's really brushed aside, you have to, again, it's one of those things I didn't notice really as a kid.
Okay. Wait, I want to see if you can say what I say. When the bugs attack, I think that it's caused by Denise Richards' character.
You think it's what?
Caused by Denise Richards' character, Carmen.
No, so it's one of those things that it's like blink if you miss it, but that's also kind of, I think, intentional because, so what caused it is that the bugs have like their section of space that's theirs, and it's a quarantine zone. No one is supposed to go there. A Mormon like extremist group, they were told you cannot set up like a Mormon, like what you want to call it, like colony on this planet.
It's a mission. Yeah, basically.
A mission. Yeah, a mission, a colony. So it's like you can't go there, and they went anyway. And it was in bug space. So that was seen as an act of invasion by these bugs. And so, again, the film frames it as like, oh, look at this horrible stuff. They're killing people. They attacked Buenos Aires. When we, not directly through the government or anything, but like we infringed, like came into their space first.
Yeah.
Like,
we threw the first punch, basically.
And the fact that like you see it in one of those little like news things, but it's like treated as just like, oh, this little thing happened, but all the Mormons are dead and that's it and goodbye.
Well, see, when I saw it, I thought what triggered it, because the whole quarantine thing is, they had plotted a course with Denise, and Xander on the thing, but she changed it to be more efficient, quote unquote. And so I always thought they passed through that area. That's why they had the asteroid, launched at them, and that's the one that was going to work. That's what I always thought it was. I thought it was Denise thinking she was so cool.
That'd be funny if it was a mixture of both, because that is true. Like, we don't know how she made it more efficient. So I think it was the Mormons, because I think the asteroid was already on its way to Earth.
Okay.
But I could be wrong. Maybe. Who knows? Maybe in the book it's like very specifically like because of Carmen.
Right, because I thought the Mormon missionary thing was on another planet that they had started to invade now. Because remember, they kind of just go in and just invade, planets as they go, as they're expanding out. So I just thought the Mormon missionaries were just on another planet. So
it's supposed to be in bug space. I remembered because I was like, it's one of those things where like I remembered that we invaded the bugs first.
Yeah.
But it's like, it's downplayed. So when I was watching, I was like looking out for like the little news bit about it, and I'm like, oh, there it is. So anyway, the point is that we actually, we invaded them first, and they're defending themselves. So anyway, war is declared. And then the rest of the movie is like pretty much just kind of action schlock. We get to the ending. And we find out that there's a smart bug and it sucks out your brains and blah, blah, blah. The very end is kind of where it's pretty obvious where things are. I feel like even as a teenager, I might not have understood that the whole movie was a satire, but I could kind of tell, right. Like, so we haven't seen Neil Patrick Harris since he went into military intelligence, and then when we see him again, he's wearing a full-on Gestapo suit.
With the leather trench
he looks
coat.
Like
that.
Yeah,
is like,
he looks like
that's like not just on the nose; it's tapping you, it's punching you in the face.
Yes, and so the big thing that we finally capture a brain bug, and he's using his psychic powers to read its mind, and the big glorious triumph over the bugs before the movie ends is it's afraid.
I felt so bad for that bug at the end. Did you see how it was like whimpering and it was withdrawing? It was so scared. That poor bug. I felt bad for it at the end.
Yeah. It's interesting. So and then the very, very end is, we're seeing all of these
Like
characters
that made me
we
emotional.
saw as like innocent.
Like, I was like actually like about to cry for the bud.
Right? So we see all of the characters, and we started off with them as like these innocent high schoolers, teens like with bright-eyed ambition. And we see them now, and they're just like cogs in the machine. And like seeing Johnny Rico be like, his high school teacher, just, come on, you apes, you want to live forever? It's like this thing where it's framed as like this fun adventure movie, but like what is happening is just like this cycle of warmongering. Like they have become fully indoctrinated into this groupthink of like the military is great and it is important, and the only way forward is violence, which is something that, again, like maybe it just didn't register with me as a teenager, or maybe it's because I, at the time before like getting into arts and stuff, it was like all the
You hadn't
football
developed
kids
empathy
and like
yet.
skate. Yeah, you know what I mean? Like all the teen boys that are just like, tough guy. So, but that's a thing early on, in their high school class. It's just like, no, actually, violence is the only way to solve problems. Violence doesn't solve anything. Is just it's the worst kind of wishful thinking. So, like, that is the bedrock of what this society is built upon, is the only way to solve any problem is violence. Which is crazy. Which is really crazy to think about. But we don't usually summarize the whole movie. The reason I wanted to summarize was to kind of get in to that list I was talking about. So I have got Umberto Eco's 14 Characteristics of Fascism, and he's an essayist, sociologist, I believe, who was, he grew up in fascist Italy. And so
he would know.
So he observed a lot of, behavior while Mussolini was in power and when he was on the rise and stuff. And so based on his studies and also his firsthand knowledge, he created this like list of things that are part of like a fascist government. And people have been bringing it up a lot because of things going on in the world with different like leaders and stuff like that, because it's kind of like, hey, he said this, let's keep this in mind and stuff. So we're going to go through and kind of, talk about Heinlein's vision for this world and whether this is fascist or not. So the first characteristic of fascism is a cult of tradition.
Yes.
So
literally, yes. The fact that he doesn't change what his speeches are from his officer, the lieutenant or corporal. I can't remember their ranks. The guy before him to the end, it literally is the same thing. Cult of tradition. Absolutely.
It's interesting because, we'll get into it with some of the ones later down on this list. Because I said this, there is some plausible deniability with Heinlein because some of his views do not line up with this. But I do agree. I think that this characteristic does exist, just not in the way that we usually think of traditionalism. And because what usually comes up in like Italy and all these places is like, the modern society has lost its way from traditional values and traditional ways of life.
Which
like
leads us into number 2.
Yes, which is rejection of modernism. This is one I don't think applies to this society specifically because we have technology. They also are very into researching the enemy and stuff like that. Like they're not like
the only thing
about
the only thing I could think of would be like the more modern way of thinking, which in this case would be, violence doesn't solve anything. That's the only thing I can think of, but there's not enough evidence in the movie to where that's, still just an old adage, or if that's like the new way. We really don't see people push from the other side in this movie.
The thing that's interesting about the whole cult of tradition, the first point, is that it exists, but in this way of it was this new society and government was founded by veterans, and they were all about the military is great. The military is like the bedrock of society. So that was like what they founded this world government on. And so that has kind of become the tradition. And that's sort of like again, it's not like traditional values like, oh, only a man and a woman can get married, like not like that kind of stuff, but there is like a tradition that gets carried through, and it's also like molded into you by like this cultural acceptance of like, we need to join the, we need to serve, we need to have our military service. So it's just like this thing that's seen as like something you do.
Yeah.
So that's where it's like a traditional thing, and that's where it is kind of interesting. And I would say like rejection of modernization doesn't exactly apply to this society. But the other thing is like, and Umberto says this, like when he's talked about this list, you don't need all of these to qualify. These are just like characteristics of fascism, but like if you were in a fascist government, it doesn't necessarily mean like, oh, it's only 13 out of the 14, therefore it doesn't qualify. Like, no, that's not the way that works. Oh, here we go. Action for action's sake. Thinking is emasculation. Yes, this definitely applies.
Yeah.
Just do it.
Just do it.
Just do it. Just do it. Like action, even like reckless action, like, right? Well, even just stuff like the way Carmen is kind of reckless with how she's driving the ship. Like she's on the verge of getting in trouble, but she's also kind of seen as a hot shot, even though like one mistake could kill some people on the ship. And then even going back to that thing where it's like violence is always the answer. Their sports team is like a big, it's like future football or whatever you want to call that sport that he's playing at the beginning.
Yeah.
Like action is rewarded in this society, whether, obviously with military action and stuff like that, but even just like, for instance, like fist fights and stuff with the guy after the football game, or like when they're in the bar, it's like they don't break this stuff up. It's like seen as like, oh, this is good. This is a good thing.
Yeah.
Oh, disagreement is treason.
Yeah, going against anything that the leaders have put in place is not seen as just, okay, we have difference of ideas, difference of opinions, and that's okay. It's like, what is wrong with you?
I will say, once again, with this society, it's interesting because you'd think of this as like 1984, where it's like if you disagree with Big Brother, you get thrown in prison and tortured until you agree with everything. In this society, it's just kind of culturally ingrained. Like if you don't agree with the Federation, you're like a pariah. Like they're not going to jail you. They're not going to, but like you're seen as like an outside. You're not a citizen anymore.
You're a civilian.
You don't have, you're a civilian and you don't have the same rights as everybody else. So you're not imprisoned, but you're also very limited in what you're able to do. Like Johnny Rico's family is so interesting because they just have this privilege of being super wealthy. So they're likely you don't have a choice. If you're a poor or middle class family in this universe, it's not a question of whether or not you want to join. It's like you need to, like, oh, you don't want to be able to vote.
Yeah.
So it definitely applies, but I think it's interesting because I think, again, like with these sort of dystopias, people always go to the most extreme and scary ones, like 1984. But in this case, it's not quite like that. Fear of difference. This one is huge in this movie and in this book.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
So, hopefully bringing up Nazis a lot in this episode isn't going to get us dinged. So Heinlein, it's not an accident that he picked bugs as the villain. It is very intentionally dehumanizing the enemy.
Yeah.
And this is this is what the Nazis did, because they often in printed media and like propaganda and stuff, they always associated Jews with rats.
Yes,
they are not people. They are subhuman. They are vermin. And in this work, both in this film and in the original book, they are bugs.
They need to,
and
be,
that's another
they're
one.
Gross, and they need to be squished out.
Yeah, and that's kind of the thing, too, is like finding out, oh, there's a thinking bug. It's not seen as like, oh, they have the capability of thought.
Right, there's
that
there's that whole discussion they have where it's like, I never heard of a bug with a brain, that sort of a thing.
Yeah, again, it's like if this was like Star Trek or something, finding out there's a thinking bug, it's like, oh, we need to meet. We need to talk things over. We need to settle this without violence.
Yeah.
Maybe we need to apologize for invading their space. Maybe we could sign a treaty. Maybe after signing the treaty, we will be allowed into bug space. Maybe they can come to our planets. Maybe there will, we can be friends and stuff. No. Instead, like the difference. What was the way he said? Fear of difference. In his quote, actually, Echo says, "Fascism is racist by definition." So, like, the subtlety is not there in this story, but
oh yeah,
but that frankly is kind of damning for Heinlein. Like, he sees it as like, maybe he saw it as like being obvious or something, but it's like it just kind of makes you look like a monster. Like, oh, the bugs kill them all.
You're right.
And that's the thing too. Like, it's funny. I don't know if he's the one who invented this, but bug aliens are like very, very common in science fiction right now. There's the TV show adaptation of the Three Body Problem. Yeah. And the Trisolarans are famously very small, and they look kind of like bugs. And as an insult to humans, once they are like, oh, we can't trust you, we need to kill all humans, they call us bugs. Like, they hack into all of the stuff on Earth and show the message, you are bugs. So, like, there's kind of an irony in that work where it's like they look like bugs, but they're calling us bugs. It's the whole thing. Yeah. And again, I don't know if he is the one that was the first one to think of aliens as being bug-like. I think, like, the first alien invasion story was H.G. Wells' War of the Worlds, but they were like octopuses. So I don't know if he invented that, but
I think octopuses are considered to be, like, intelligent.
Right? So I don't know if he was the first to come up with this, but it's an ongoing thing in science fiction, and in this case, it doesn't look good. It's not as great as he thought it was when he wrote it in the book. Appeal to social frustration. So usually with a struggling middle class, a fascist government will say, that, oh, it's because of the government that you're struggling. If you elect us, we will solve all of your problems and you will be rich. I sort of touched on this with Johnny Rico's family. Like, again, it's all just kind of based on this military service thing, because
I would say less in this case and with this work, at least what we see in the movie.
Yeah, again, it's not so much, well, you don't see, it's implied that the government, like the veterans, took hold of Earth's government through force. It sounds like it was like a violent coup, essentially. So they didn't campaign to, get elected or anything like that. And again, there's no real saying like, oh, if you join up, you're going to... Well, I mean, like, that's the thing. Again, it's military service. Like, do you want to be a citizen? Do you want, like, if you need money or, like, a career, all you have to do is sign up. So, like, that's, again, it not so much as other things on the list, but it's kind of there just in a weird way. Obsession with a plot.
Oh, yeah. They had this
from
what I understand based on what you said is, like, this story that, I don't know, the bugs are dumb, the bugs just want to kill us all, I don't know. Is that kind of it?
It's another subdued one. This is more like QAnon sort of stuff. The NWO,
literally a plot. Okay.
Literally, like, paranoia, like, the satanic pedophiles are coming to get us kind of stuff. So, again, not exactly. The thing is, like, this film and the news stuff that we see is very clearly propaganda. So that's kind of applies, because we don't really get the bugs side of the story.
Yeah.
Even when you're reading between the lines and you notice that we were the ones that invaded their space, we could have done more than they're letting on. The government has control of the news and the media, so there might be things that we did to the bugs that we don't even know about. So there could be a plot, or like, an obsession with a plot.
They're sitting there, they're constantly studying them.
Yeah.
I mean, like, that has to do something. I think that says something about maybe they think there's a plot behind the scenes.
Right? Yeah, and that is a good point. Before we're at war with the bugs, we're already dissecting them and stuff, so makes you think like maybe the war was planned, maybe this is a plot, maybe like the bugs never went to war with us, maybe
like the whole thing where somebody got their intelligence wrong about what the blue things were that come out of the sky, which I always thought that was intentional.
Next one is definitely applicable to the bugs. Enemy is both strong and weak.
Oh yeah, because they're constantly going back and forth between, well, they're stupid, they can't do this, but oh my god,
but they can eviscerate you.
They take your brain, make you send out fake messages. It's like, well, which is it?
Well, and also it kind of goes. A great example of this, going back to the high school thing with the golden girl, the slutty biology teacher. She's talking about how the bugs evolved, and it's like, oh yeah, they don't have a brain like we do, but physically they are so much more adaptable than us, and they can breed better. They have higher numbers, so physically they are the better race, but they're stupid. It's kind of that little biology lesson is kind of exactly they are strong and they are weak at the same time. They're not smart like us, but they could rip you apart. So that again definitely applies. Oh, here we go. Again, obvious with this movie. Pacifism is trafficking with the enemy.
Yeah, because they just love being at war.
Yeah. Well, and that's it. So, if you're not fighting in the war, then that means that you're in with the enemy.
Yeah.
Again, that doesn't come up exactly that way in this film. No one accuses Johnny Rico of being in league with the bugs if he quits. But there is that social pressure to join up. And just pacifism is a weak trait that should be filtered out of society, is kind of more what this society is about.
What's interesting, though, is that pacifism is what allows fascism to take hold.
Exactly.
Interesting.
It is interesting, right? Well, I mean, go back to Johnny Rico's family. They think, it's interesting that they have such an aversion to their son joining up, and they think it's terrible and it'll ruin his life. But they never speak out against it. They never do. They're rich. Can't you, campaign to, maybe, change the law or something? They are pacifists in a sense, because they have power, they just don't use it. They're comfortable with just being wealthy and sitting in their house and doing nothing, or, running their businesses.
Just being wealthy, what I mean? Counting their money.
Who knows? I mean, again, it is a sense pacifism, because they clearly do not like the way things are being run, but they're not doing anything about it. So that, going back to what you said about pacifism is what lets fascism, in, that's kind of Johnny Rico's parents, essentially, because that's what they're doing. If they don't like, the Federation and the army and all that, well, okay, are you going to do anything about it? Okay, number 10, contempt for the weak. Goes without saying in this movie.
Oh yeah, I mean, just the obvious example would be, the walk of shame or whatever it's called.
So many of these last ones are so right, obviously. So next one would be everyone is educated to become a hero.
Yeah.
What do you think that is with joining up? Oh, you can be, everyone's a hero when you're in the army. I'm doing my part. With the little kid going, I'm even doing my part. And then the soldiers laugh.
And they're just playing with guns.
Machismo and weaponry. So disdain for women and non-standard sexual habits.
That's not discussed, but in this movie, I would disagree and say that there's not a disdain for women.
That's the thing that's interesting, right? So this is the point that I brought up. So
they're equal to the point they all shower together too. It's not...
Exactly. Women are... It's actually kind of... One thing I liked about this as a teenager is I thought it was really cool that women and men were very equal. Women... There's no limit, oh, you want to join the mobile infantry and you're a woman? Awesome. Join up. You're treated as one of the guys. Everyone showers together. And in that way, it was actually kind of cool. It's like one of the only cool things about it. And that's the other thing about Heinlein in his personal life. I already mentioned, like, he's polyamorous, so he had multiple sexual partners.
Yeah.
And he's a nudist. Like, these are all things that, like, a super right-wing, like, fascist government would probably, like, string him up for doing stuff like that.
Yep.
So, like, it's weird because, and I'm sure these are the sort of things that people point to where they're like, oh, he's not advocating for fascism. Look at him. He's got all these weird liberal ideas. So, doesn't apply to the movie, but I do think it's interesting because it's like, man, like, I'm pretty sure with all of the other things you have set up, you know, you wrote the book, so you made it so that things were like this nice and awesome and everyone's equal. But like, if this fictional universe where everyone's joining the army and everything, like, I feel like it would not be as rosy as it is in the story.
Right. No, yeah.
But yeah, that's one interesting, you know, point number 12 doesn't apply to Heinlein or his story, but
there is sort of a little bit, not like of like disdain for women, but when I think of machismoism, I think of like, you know, when they talk about like men being like that whole thing where he's like hooking up with Des. He's like, okay, well, we can push off the launch another 10 minutes for you to finish up, you know, soldier, wink, you know.
Right.
So there's a tiny bit in there, but it's not enough to, I think, really qualify this step.
Yeah, exactly. All right. Selective populism. So, like, this doesn't really come up in the movie, but again, with those little news segments, you could maybe argue that
I disagree.
It's happening in Okay. But so what this is, selective populism is when a group is, say a fascist government has a pre-selected group that believes something, and then they present this as the voice of the people. So, like, you know, maybe a small group of people are protesting Labubus at Target. Oh, that means everybody hates Labubus, you know, like that kind of thing. Which doesn't really come up in the movie, but you said it does, so
it
go
does.
for it.
I mean, the fact that I don't think it has to be a small group, but a selected group of people. In this case, where you can't vote unless you're essentially a veteran. That's selective populism. So I mean, it does come.
There you go.
It is brought up. We don't like explore it much, but they mention that it's there.
Perfect. And what I was going to say is a potential selected populism. Again, like, the news segments are really funny in the movie, but they're also controlled. Exactly. Like, there's no other side presented. It's just exactly what they want you to think. You know, would you like to know more? And then you click, and then they just tell you. They do tell you more, but it's like you don't hear another side. You just hear more propaganda.
About the same, yeah.
Exactly. Newspeak. Here we go. We're on the final one. And this is one I've seen it coming up a little bit more these days, but it's one thing in 1984 I feel like the dumbest people don't even, like, talk about. What Newspeak is, it's an interesting kind of concept that Orwell came up with, and, you know, it's actually been kind of, and frankly, I mean, I guess maybe he came up with it because it was used in fascist propaganda during the war. But basically what it is it is limiting language to the point where you don't have words to express the, the control. Like, you can't say what's happening. Like, the most famous thing in 1984, like, example of Newspeak, is that they're filtering out the word bad. In that book, you can't say something is bad, you can say it is ungood. And that is kind of...
That reminds me of... Well, I guess there's a famous example of that with I Love Lucy, where she is having a baby. They can't say pregnant, they can't say pregnancy, they can only say she is expecting. So that's all they ever say. She is expecting. They, for some reason, could not say give birth, pregnancy, having a baby, or whatever. They had to say she was expecting. So I kind of put that in the same sort of thing. It's a way to talk about it without really talking about it.
Exactly. And it's like a really interesting concept. It's funny, a science fiction YouTuber I watch called Quinn's Ideas did a whole video on it, citing a couple of different works of science fiction. But the idea in 1984 is that as they filter out words they don't want, and as new generations are born and they don't know the old words, they will literally change the way people think, so that it's not even that they don't have the words to express the word bad, they don't know what bad is, so it's almost like a form of mind control. Heady stuff. I don't think that it exists in that form, but I do think, again, it's like there's kind of this groupthink in this society with the whole military service and stuff, where people all kind of say the same things and think the same ways. So I don't think they really limit language as much as they just sort of, force you to think a certain way. They frame
the narrative for you.
Exactly. So I think it applies, just not in the traditional sense. Yeah. So even if there's a couple of points that do not apply to this, I think only like 2 of them didn't apply, maybe 3. So
I would say definitely the society that exists in the Trooper movie. Why can't I speak right now? Is
Starship Troopers.
Thank you. Starship Troopers is a fascist society.
Yes. And I think
I'm not going to go as far to say that the writers, I don't know enough about his life.
No.
But he definitely created this work. So I think there's room for further examination, but I don't think there's enough evidence to say that the author was fascist.
I think here's the thing. A lot of... No one goes out... Again, no one except for like really crazy people will say like, I'm a Nazi. The way that these kinds of governments are set up, it's like that whole point about appealing to the middle class. You begin to believe these things knowing that they might not be politically correct, but you also don't really think of the implications of the oppressors and the oppressed and how this is going to affect society on a grand scale. No one elected Mussolini thinking that he was going to do what he ended up doing, right?
Right.
And people clearly didn't like him by the end of, because they chased him out of town and lynched him essentially.
Yeah.
So like no one, including this author Heinlein, I think ever intend to set up a fascist government. I think that he really had I think his military service had a positive influence on him, and he served during the World War II. So he was fighting Nazis, and I'm sure that he felt like a hero after coming home, like a lot of people did. And I'm sure that's kind of where this is coming from. I think he set up a fascist society, not really thinking of the implications of what he was writing.
Yeah.
A lot of soldiers came back not knowing anything. Like, the Holocaust wasn't really, taught until, a decade after. It wasn't seen... It wasn't taught in schools. A lot of soldiers didn't even, encounter any concentration camps, unless you were, in the platoons that actually were in Europe and invaded Germany and stuff, or in Poland. You didn't see this stuff. So I don't know where he was stationed. I don't know if he knew much about what happened.
I think he just thought, because I think that, I'm assuming based on the time this was published, I'm assuming this was written in response to maybe some anti-war sentiments, and he's kind of thinking, well, wouldn't it be great if it was like this? But like you said,
well, he was a big Dwight Eisenhower fan, so he was one of those kinds of people, oh yeah, you hippies, you don't like the bomb, but if it wasn't for the bomb, we wouldn't have won the war. He was one of those people. So, again, I don't know where he was stationed. I don't know if he knows much about the Holocaust, but the thing that I just find so puzzling, because, again, I doubt he was, a bad person, but, writing in your science fiction book about the bug aliens that are subhuman and need to be eradicated, it's you do not see the irony or, the fact that, who are you fighting during World War II, my guy? Did you not, notice maybe some parallels between what you're saying and what they were saying about the Jews? It's funny to me. But that's the whole thing
with, villains always think they are correct.
Exactly. So that's my thing. I do think he might have been a fascist, but I don't think that necessarily means he, wanted to he wasn't thinking about what the implications for his like perfect government would be.
He really liked the army. We're having flashbacks to Rope in their discussions about the morally superior.
Exactly.
And then he's like, what? You thought... Because I really think Jimmy Stewart's character did not think about the implications of what he was saying.
Exactly. I think to him, thanks to the army, we stopped Hitler from conquering the world. And to him, it's like that was... thanks to the military, we stopped something horrible from happening. Thus, the military is a universal good that we need, and it would be better off if everyone served, because then we wouldn't have these hippies protesting the bomb, because they would have seen what he saw and all this sort of stuff. So that's where I think I stand with him. With this movie, why it is satire is because it is so... over the top. We haven't talked about like the styles and stuff, and I think this is like the good ending point for this review, because this movie, it's not like a comedy, but it is funny. It is so ridiculous, and I remember laughing a lot when I saw this as a teenager, because like, for instance, that bit in Training where Johnny Rico, he gets the guy to take his helmet off and the guy dies. He doesn't just get shot, he like, his head explodes. Yeah. Like, it is the most like over the top violent thing. And it's the same thing with like any of the combat with the bugs. Like, there's a bug that just shoots lava and like melts people. And there's a lot of like,
it was
wacky
lava. I kept thinking it was fire, and I'm like, why are these people melting?
Maybe it's lava, maybe it could be acid.
Lava
it's
makes
orange
so much
goo
sense
that
now,
makes you melt. And even with the brain alien, it's like it doesn't just have psychic stuff like Neil Patrick Harris. No, it has a straw that sucks your brains out. The way that Michael Ironside says that.
It's very like,
it's so over the top. And watching this time, the thing that I think is so awesome and effective about this movie is the fact that I didn't really I didn't key into the satire as a kid. This movie, it's propaganda from this fictional universe. It's trying to present this dystopia as like, oh, isn't this awesome? Don't you wish you could go on a bug fighting adventure? Because like you get wrapped up in the melodrama of the romance and the action scenes and stuff like that. And even now watching it for this podcast, I just was enjoying like the schlock. I was, I knew the implications and the greater like stuff that was problematic about what's going on, but you get so wrapped up in the emotions of what's going on that it is essentially what is so effective about propaganda. So like, it's making fun of it, but it's also kind of showing how effective it is as a weapon.
Yeah. The Learn More especially really nails that in. I was gonna say, this is a great satire, because I mean, this came either like the year before or the year after like Saving Private Ryan, and it's interesting to see like the total opposite, because that movie does go a lot into like the whole honor, I wouldn't say glorification of it, but the brotherhood, the honor, and all that sort of stuff, and then to see this come out either the year before or year after and have like the total opposite message, while at the same time showing you the ultimate consequences of that same ideology, is interesting to me. It is a very interesting time for this to have come out.
It is. I mean, I will say, like, I did watch Saving Private Ryan somewhat recently. I think it was like tail end of 2023, so it's been a little bit, but it's not like uncritical of the army. There is like this whole bit where Tom Hanks is like talking about like, because they're just wanting to like kill this German soldier, and he's like, oh my god, what's happening to all of you, blah blah blah. And eventually they ask him like what he used to be before he was in the army, and he's like, I was a teacher. So like there is some criticism of like just being...
I wouldn't say it's as sharp as this one is. One's more of a straight up critique.
Yes. Well, and it's like a moment in the movie, and then it's kind of undercut later, because that same soldier ends up being the one that alerts the Germans to where they are and end up being their downfall. So then it's kind of muddled, because it's like, well, if they had murdered that guy, then they would have all survived. So it's not, my point is like, it's just not like fully on the side of like, oh, we should just kill.
I'm
everything.
not saying it's on the
But
side, but it's definitely one of those like revered war movies. And when you think about war movies, kind of also have this sort of weird, kind of gross way of viewing warfare, because they always want to show you how horrific it is, but they also want to make sure that they keep that sheen or that layer of lacquer of honor and brotherhood and selflessness and stuff like on top of it. And so this kind of this takes that kind of lacquer and was like, okay, let's build everything out of the lacquer and see how it looks, if that makes any sense at all.
No, it does.
So I've never been a fan of war movies, one, for that reason, and two, I kind of like have always been like, I mean, like there are like when I like say I'm saying where the movie, like I wouldn't put like movies that I like Gone with the Wind or Atonement, and necessarily critique them as a war film, because to me there's so much more than that. The war is just a part of it, even though I think they're definitely classified as one. I'm thinking of like 1917, Saving Private Ryan, the new All Quiet in the Western Front, even the old one for that point. Something about it just never appealed to me. So,
did you watch the new Quiet on the Western Front or the old one?
I watched the old one. It's been a while, but yeah, I watched the old one. The one from like...
Well, because that one, it's interesting you bring that one up, because that's like an anti-war story in general. Like, it's
that
like
is
talking
true.
about how stupid and that too, like...
that is true.
One of my favorite war movies. Well, and like, what are some of the other... 1917 doesn't really glorify...
Pearl Harbor, there's... Sorry, go ahead.
Pearl Harbor tried to be like a romance like Titanic. 1917, I would say, doesn't really glorify warfare. If anything, it's kind of like All Quiet on the Western Front and showing how horrific it is. It was, it's a one-shot movie. We were just talking about that with Rope. But like that's the thing with 1917 that's cool, is it's all done as if it's just one continuous shot.
Yeah.
But it's just, it's a pretty simple story. I wouldn't say it glorifies war. I think part of your feelings is like the type of person who likes war movies.
Maybe that's what it is.
Of them. Because some of my favorite war... I don't think any war movie I've ever seen is pro-war.
Well, and I don't mean they're pro-war. It has this weird shellac on it, is what I've been talking about.
Yeah.
It's just off-putting. Even though like its overall message is anti-war, it's like anti-war asterisk.
Well, it's also like, Saving Private Ryan is pretty raw America and all that. There's like Band of Brothers was one that I know was pretty on the whole like brotherhood side of stuff. There was I feel like Clint Eastwood's, I never watched Letters from Iwo Jima or the other one that he did at the same time, but I'm guessing those were probably pretty sentimental about the military. One of my favorite war movies, and maybe we'll cover it on the show, but Paths of Glory by
Flags of Our Fathers. Forgot about that one.
That's what it was. Yeah. So like I'm sure Clint Eastwood's are probably a little bit more pro-military. My favorite war movies are usually pretty, like Apocalypse Now is one that you get more. I wouldn't say you get like the bros that like Apocalypse Now. It's more of the film bros, but at least they understand like the whole point. It's like, oh, let's base it on Heart of Darkness. So it's like the deeper you get into the war, the crazier people get.
Yeah.
And as I was saying, Paths of Glory is one of my favorite war movies, and that's all about like the absurdity of war. And maybe we'll cover that on the show, but it has one of the most gut-wrenching like execution sequences I've ever, like I literally made my stomach sink when I was like watching it for class. So maybe we'll get into it more. But yeah, like this is a great critique of stuff. And that's like Paul Verhoeven, his whole thing. We'll probably talk about him in the future of this show, so I didn't really like harp on him too much. He's an interesting filmmaker because he's like a Dutch art house guy who came to America in the 80s and stayed, up until like the late 90s. And he made like American films, but he almost made them like sarcastically. Like he was making good movies that he liked and he believed in and stuff, but they were almost all satirical because he was kind of making fun of American cinema. like his movies were always super violent and super horny, and like, you know, he was almost like mocking the sort of stuff that was like flying in cinema at the time. RoboCop, people forget, like, it was also a satire. It's making fun of the corporatization of things like the police and privatization of, you know, like corporations owning the police and stuff like that. And it also happens to be a fun little action movie, but just like this film, it had a lot to say about politics and things like that. And same, you know, with, oh man, a bunch of stuff. Like,
Yeah.
even like, I'm sure there's even a case probably to be made from Showgirls. I know you like that film. I've seen it once. Don't remember all of the fine points, but you know, but he's an interesting guy because like all of his films could kind of be like this one, as like satire, making fun of like some aspect of like American culture, and in this case, it was like war. Which this was like the late 90s, you know, the war on terror hadn't started, but it's almost kind of prophetic for what would come in just a few years after this film came out.
I remember when the war broke, we started having all of these like war storylines in like every TV show, like ever. And then we had, I don't know if you remember, I forget what the whole deal with this was. There was even that TV movie, what is that? Her name is Sarah Lynch or whatever. Jessica Lynch. That's what it was. Jessica and Saving Jessica Lynch or something. There was that. There was, then Lifetime started that show Army Wives.
Oh boy.
But
yeah, was there any?
They all these sports have their merits. There's always this thing about war movies that just kind of just makes me feel gross about it, even though, like you said, they're not pro-war. There's something that
not all of them.
not all of them. There are definitely some, but like the famous ones are typically not. But there's something just that leaves you just with like an ick. And I always call it, there's a love, like I said, there's a level of shellac they put over it, and that's what always kind of like, to me, it undercuts any sort of like message that they're putting out there that was really good for society or something like that. Anyway, but yeah, I did love this movie. I'm not someone who really understands usually satire a lot of the time, but I did really like this one. Like you said, it was meant to be funny, but I love how it comes across because it's satire is unintentionally funny. Also, I did like that I don't become super attached to really any of the characters. And I think, and I do have the same complaint though, and I guess this is also a point that I had with Dunkirk. I'm like, when they're all like they're all dressed up and they're in their fatigues or whatever, and they're out there, I can't tell any of them apart. So I'm like, okay, who died? And I'm just like looking, I'm like, who's missing from here? Because it's like, I forget their names. And I'm like, who's missing from the group now? Afterwards.
Let's see, 1, 2, 3.
But I will definitely give this movie 3 out of 4 pitchers of sweet tea. It's very enjoyable, definitely underappreciated in its time.
Yes, and I think I'm actually going to be the same with my score. 3 out of 4. Unlike whatever movie we recently covered where it was like, oh, it was Dawn of the Dead, where it was like, oh, I watched it all the time as a teenager, but it hasn't.
I feel like this one's aged well.
Well, it just wasn't as good as like I've seen better zombie movies since that came out.
Yeah,
it's still as good as I remember.
And I feel like
it being.
It's still very timely.
Yes. So like 3 out of 4. I just wouldn't say it's like the best Verhoeven movie. It's, you know, not like a masterwork or anything. But if you want like something fun to watch, it's great. The effects are super 90s. But also it works with the style that it's going for, because it's trying to be like a schlocky sci-fi pulp thing. So like It works really well as that, even if the effects aren't. And again, they're not bad. They just feel very like dated. Like it's mainly the CGI. Like when they were dissecting the bugs and stuff, I was like, oh, that's cool, because it's like an actual, you know, thing.
I did look away the first time. I was like, that's kind of gross.
You were basically Denise Richards, like dry heaving, trying to. But yeah, no, it's really enjoyable. It's held up. Frankly, maybe I will end up getting a Blu-ray of it, because it is a fun movie to watch.
Get a steelbook. Go all the way.
Maybe I will. maybe I would like to know more. So 3 out of 4 shots of whiskey for me. But what about you, viewers or listeners? Would you like to know more?
Remember,
I'll stop.
Remember, civiliancy is the service guarantees civiliancy. Listening guarantees you will be a civilian.
Citizenship. Service guarantees citizenship.
I know wrong.
Service guarantees citizenship.
It is civilian's the other one. Oh well.
So if you want to be, if you want to be a citizen, make sure to subscribe if you're listening to this on YouTube Music, and if you're listening to this on Spotify or Apple, be sure to follow the show. We've got a whole backlog of episodes, and we've got more to come. Another cinematic satire masterpiece with this pairing coming up. But until next time, I've been Whiskey.
I've been Sweet Tea.
Keeping it Kino.
And Sackett Scorsese.
Bye, guys. See you next time.
Bye. Reels on the Rocks is a production of La Prince Laboratories. It is edited and produced by Alejandro Castillo and programmed by Jamie King. Original music is provided by Pat Mars, and original artwork by Asa Esparza.